It's nearly noon and I'm leaving St Moritz on my way to Basel, which is a large city in Switzerland. As you can see, the weather is fantastic today. It's really hot and it's great to get a last look at this town before I go. Here you've got the Catholic church from the 19th century, St Carl's, which is just on the edge of the lake. And what a great view across the lake. The town itself, St Moritz proper, is reflected in its waters. The large white building on the right is in fact a combination of a swimming pool and a spa where I spent some time yesterday. The Swiss are known for their ingenious infrastructure, but this particularly impressed me. St Moritz is actually two towns, St Moritz by the lake and St Moritz on the hill, and here the Swiss have connected the two of them with a covered roof and an art gallery and an escalator, reducing the arduous climb up between the two for tourists. In addition, it's also connected to the car park on the right and to the train station slightly further up. Yes, this is the end of my time in To get to Basel, require travelling on the Albula-Berliner Line railway, which you've already seen. This is one of my favourite stretches of railway in the world.
The most impressive constructions on the line, as it curves elegantly above the valley below.
This is one of my favourite parts of the whole train journey. We just stopped one side of a bridge when a man walked out onto the sandbar throwing a frisbee, and you'll just see his dog coming into view to catch it. It was a very nice moment. I've now arrived in Basel, and what you can see in the distance, that golden tower, is in fact the Bank of International Settlements. I've had to dub this bit because the sound quality on my camera was not very good, but in fact this is sort of the world's central bank and makes the rules for banks all over the world. So to me, as someone who works in a bank, it's incredibly important. Despite Basel being Switzerland's third largest city, it only has a population of about 500,000, and so is similar in size to some of the northern towns in the UK, like say Leeds. It does however have some wonderful historic buildings, like this you can see ahead, the Basel Minster with its wonderful tiled roof. While I was here, I decided to visit the Art Museum, which has an extensive collection of works by one of Basel's most famous artistic sons, Arnold Böcklin. He was a symbolist painter, and this work depicting Odysseus and Circe, and this work depicting the wild hunt are typical of his oeuvre, typical of the late 19th century style. But the most famous of all his works is this one, The Isle of the Dead. Böcklin painted 5 versions of it during his lifetime, and it inspired the famous Russian composer Sergei Rachmaninoff to write a symphonic poem with the same title. Böcklin's symbolist mysticism would fall out of vogue in the early to mid-20th century, but other artists were there to take up the torch, such as Picasso, whose famous Harlequin here, in an unusual realistic style, is one of the standouts of the whole museum. Here we have one of my favourite paintings, Bride of the Wind by Oskar Kokoschka. Painted during his affair with Alma Mahler, it depicts the tempestuous nature of their relationship, which was often volatile and ended disastrously. In my opinion, Kokoschka would never equal this work. The rest of the museum's collection has some works by local artists such as Giacometti, who is Swiss, but also, as Basel is very near to France, several by prominent French artists, such as Picasso, whose Harlequin we've already seen, but this is in his later style. In line with this trend, the medieval section has numerous works by famous German-Swiss artist Hans Holbein, who spent a lot of time in Basel, including this extraordinary work of the Death of Christ, which I think is one of his best paintings. It just looks so realistic, especially for the Middle Ages. The modern section consists of several works by Van Gogh and Cézanne, artists who painted a lot of their works in the south of France, which is also near Basel. To me, however, one of the best parts of the museum is seeing how local artists captured the landscape that surrounded them. Here you have a work by Giacometti depicting the ice on the Alps in winter and the beautiful frosted feeling that you get just looking at them. While here, from Segantini, we have a picture of cattle at the watering place as this winter is just giving way to spring. The town centre has a delightful selection of 19th century shops, although paying over a tenner for drinking Starbucks does make the prices seem a bit ridiculous. The large red building over there is the town hall, or as it's known in Swiss, the Ratshaus. It's over 500 years old and has been the centre of government in Basel for a long time. Switzerland is a confederation made up of numerous small towns and principalities, and these all added together make up the country as a whole. Many must stay in Switzerland on the banks of the Rhine, the quintessential German river, and the next city we're going to visit, Strasbourg, even though in France, has had a strong German influence over the centuries. Strasbourg is a town broadly divided into 3 sections. On the edge you have modern Strasbourg with buildings like this, the European Parliament, which reflect its post-war heritage as a centre of the EU. Heading into town, we then come across the new town, much of which was built in the 19th century, on rationalist principles, similar to the new town in Edinburgh. The Germans took the town from the French in 1871, but it returned to the French in 1918 at the end of World War I. Finally, we leave the new town behind and headed to this part of the town, the old town, built around that building you can see and probably hear in the distance, the mighty Strasbourg Cathedral. Given the cathedral's been here since 1439, I thought it could wait and I would get lunch in the interim in a local cafe. The food here is an interesting combination of French and German. For starters, at the cafe, I decided to have bone marrow toast, which actually came in the bone, and then for my main, I elected to have what was dubbed as the ultimate sausage. This allegedly came with some potatoes, although there were only two of them, and sauerkraut, which was pretty much half a plate full. There were only two sausages, and there were various cuts of pork, which almost amounted to half a pig on your plate. I was not a fan of this Strasbourg fare. However, the interior of the cathedral more than made up for my disappointment at lunch. It's a truly extraordinary building, and the size is just incredible. The town, including the cathedral, were bombed by the British and Americans during World War II, so not all the stained glass you see here is original. The cathedral also suffered damage during the French Revolution, Reformation, and just due to time itself, but works of beauty have been installed here for centuries. For example, that clock on the left dates from the 1840s, when it was made to replace earlier clocks, and this Mary Chapel is largely original, I think, from the Middle Ages. To the darkness of the cathedral, I decided to go for a walk around the old town. This picturesque town is full of buildings from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and because it's on the banks of the Eel River, it almost feels a little bit like the canals of Amsterdam. Although it may look unlikely with the blue skies here, there was actually a storm coming in. So I retreated to the Museum of Works of the Cathedral. Here you can see some medieval stained glass. Glassworkers in the Middle Ages had a limited colour palette, primarily of blues, yellows, reds, and greens, because they did not have the same technology that we have today. But I still think these are especially beautiful works, particularly when the light shines through and you can see them at their best. In the statue hall there are works depicting the synagogue and the church. The synagogue is blind and holding a copy of the Old Testament tablets, while the church holds the cross, which is the sign of salvation. The clergy grew rich over the centuries and were able to afford very fancy tableware such as these with ivory carved handles. They could have also afford even more ornate stained glass as the centuries rolled by, and gold devotional panels such as this one. Yet to me one of the greatest treasures of the museum was the museum building itself, which dates from the medieval and Renaissance periods and has hundreds of unusual features, such as this wonderful garden outside from which you can see some of the building structure, as well as the stairwell we just saw. I don't think there's a better place to end my stay in Strasbourg, so from here I'm heading to the famous 19th century train station for where I'll catch the TGV all the way out to Paris. Bon voyage!